trust His generosity, and trust the fact that it's lavish because He loves to do it. Preach these things to yourself and attack fear and anxiety in your life with these truths, so that when you overcome fear about money, God gets the glory.
The possibility of insufficient funds can be a source of great anxiety for us. So how can we think about our money in a way that honors God? That's the question John Piper answers from Luke 12:32-34 in this episode of Light and Truth. This sermon was originally preached at Bethlehem Baptist Church on December 14th, 1997.
So Luke 12:32-34 of the dozens of texts I could have chosen is all about worshiping God with your money. There are 4 points I want to make. Many more could be made. I think I counted about 10 sermons I'd like to preach on these 3 verses, but I'll preach one and make 4 points. Number 1, in verse 32 in particular, the first point is God commands us not to be afraid about money, not to have fear about money. When it comes to money things, we're not supposed to be anxious. Don't worry, don't be afraid, He says, little flock, for your Father has chosen gladly to give you the kingdom. That little verse there is sandwiched before and after with money. Verses 22 following are all about money, things, clothing, house, and whether you're anxious about them. And then it's followed by selling possessions and giving alms and laying up treasures in heaven instead of on the earth. So this little verse, this beautiful, magnificent promise verse, the first point is don't be anxious. Don't be afraid. But now there's a deeper point in this verse, and the deeper point is that when you're not afraid concerning money, you magnify 5 things about God. And that's worship. When you're not afraid or anxious or fearful about money, you magnify 5 things about God in this one verse. And when you magnify God through not being afraid about money, you worship. Here are the 5 things. These are precious things that we want to magnify about God. Number 1, when we're not afraid about money, we magnify God as our shepherd. Do not be afraid, little flock. The word flock means we've got a shepherd and we are sheep, and therefore Psalm 23 kicks in. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not what? Want. That word is the old Elizabethan word for lack. I shall not lack. I shall not be in want. That is, if I have a shepherd like this, who loves to give me the kingdom, I will not lack for what I need. Therefore, if I believe that and thus exclude fear, I will magnify His shepherd love. Number 2, if I do not fear concerning money, I show that I treasure God as my Father. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has chosen gladly to give you the kingdom. So not only am I, or are we, sheep who have a shepherd, we are children who have a Father. He's multiplying images for us here to get rid of fear. That's what He's doing. Don't be afraid, you're sheep who have a shepherd. Don't be afraid, you're children who have a Father. Now what does that imply? Well, verse 30, 2 verses earlier, makes pretty plain what it implies. All these things, eat, drink, wear, money things, All these things the nations of the world eagerly seek. But your Father knows that you need these things. Now, He didn't say that to mock us. He said that because knowing that we need these things, He'll work to provide what we need in order to magnify His fatherhood. So if we are fearless about money, we magnify Him as shepherd, we magnify Him as Father, and that is worship. Thirdly, if we're not afraid concerning money, we show that we treasure God as our King. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has chosen gladly to give you the what? Kingdom. Who has right and authority to give us the kingdom? No peon disposes of the kingdom. The King disposes of the kingdom. And therefore, not only is He a shepherd loving us as sheep, Father loving us as children, He is King ruling us, providing for us, exerting sovereignty and power on our behalf as subjects against our enemies, including the lack of things we need. So if we trust Him as King and Shepherd and Father, and thus overcome our fear of not having enough money, then we magnify Him and He is worshipped. Fourth, if we are fearless with regard to our money, we magnify Him as free and generous. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has chosen gladly to give you the kingdom. Not sell you the kingdom, not rent you the kingdom, not lease you the kingdom for payments, mortgage payments, rent payments, lease payments. He will give you the kingdom. He loves to give you the kingdom, which means He's generous. And therefore, if we let His shepherd-like, fatherly, kingly generosity work on our fear, our anxieties, and I'm talking a battle here. You know I'm talking a battle here, right? We're not talking something that happened yesterday and doesn't happen tomorrow. We're talking a weekly thing, a paycheck by paycheck thing, or unemployment check by unemployment check thing. We're talking a battle here. The way we battle is by preaching to ourselves what I'm preaching right now. That's the way I do it. It ain't automatic for John Piper to be fearless about money, though I get paid plenty, way plenty. It isn't automatic for me. It isn't automatic for you. We are battling fear and anxiety every day, not to mention greed. And we do it by saying, He's shepherd to me, He's father to me, He's king to me, and He's not as shepherd, father, and king folding His arms, standing off in the corner saying, maybe you'll get the kingdom. I'll watch your performances. It's not the way He does it. Give, free is what the Lord does. And fifthly, when we overcome our fear and live free of fear, we magnify our God as happy in His giving. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has chosen gladly to give you the kingdom. Or, it is His good pleasure, another version says, to give you the kingdom. Or another version, it pleases Him. He's pleased to give you the kingdom. He wants to do this. He is a generous God. So, the first point of this message is trust Him as shepherd. Trust Him as Father. Trust Him as King. Trust His generosity, and trust the fact that it's lavish because He loves to do it. Preach these things to yourself and attack fear and anxiety in your life with these truths, so that when you overcome fear about money, God gets the glory. These 5 glorious things shine out of your life. And if anyone asks you, I know that you're in financial straits, and yet at work you seem to be caring about others and fairly happy. How is that? Then you say, can I share 5 things with you about my God? And He is worshipped. He is worshipped. That's point number 1. Point number 2. Trusting God in this way carries a strong impulse toward simplicity, not accumulation. Simplicity of life, not accumulation of things. Verse 33. I think you could stick a therefore in. It isn't in the text. That's my read on the connection between 32 and 33. That 32, this gospel, beautiful picture of a generous God, is the foundation from which now comes the command for verse 33. Therefore, sell your possessions and give to charity. Make yourselves money belts which do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. Now focus with me on this command, sell your possessions. Who's He talking to? Well, verse 22, the beginning of the section says, Then Jesus said to His disciples. He's talking to His disciples. These are not, by and large, rich folks. Fishermen and other types. Now these people, He tells, sell your possessions and give to people in need. Now why did He say that? Well, let's ask first, how many possessions should I sell? What do you want me to sell? My car? My books? My house? One of my coats? Which ones? Well, in chapter 18, verse 22, He said to the ruler, sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. So there's one man's answer. Everything. Sell everything you have. And come join my band of itinerant monks. However, in chapter 19, verse 8, Zacchaeus, that wee little man, came down out of his tree and went home and got saved and said, with the Lord's great approval, Look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. So, here's another man, 50%. To one man, everything. Another man, 50% of everything you have. Sell it off. Give it away. Then, in the book of Acts, chapter 4, I'm choosing these texts because they're all in Luke's writings, just to stay with the author. In Acts chapter 4, verse 37, Barnabas, it says, Barnabas, modeling for Luke as a son of encouragement, what one ought to do in those days, Barnabas sold a field he owned and brought the money and put it at the apostles' feet. So Barnabas sold a field. The ruler was to sell everything. Zacchaeus sold half. Barnabas sold a field. What should you sell? No answer. I'm not going to tell you, and Jesus hasn't told you. But He says, sell your possessions and give alms. Now why? Why? Why didn't He say, go to the bank and get some cash and give it to the poor? Why the selling of things? These people are not what we call today the rich poor or poor rich, whose assets are all locked up in real estate and don't have any money. That's not who He's talking to. Usually people like that do have money. I mean, compared to others, they might not have $100,000 or $300,000 at their disposal, but they probably have 10, because they've been taught. First you save for a rainy day and get $10,000 in the bank, and then you accumulate more and more and more and more and more and more and more. So it may all be locked up out there somewhere in real estate or somewhere, but they've got cash that they can use to give to the poor. Well, what's the situation with these folks? Why tell them to sell their possessions and give alms? Here's Peter standing there as fisherman. What, my nets? An extra pot at home? A little jewelry? An heirloom? Jesus did not say to them, take some of your savings and give it as alms. He said, sell something and give it as alms. And I think the simplest reason is this. In this New Testament context, the simplest reason, there are two. The simplest one is they didn't have enough cash to give what Jesus wanted them to give. You may have a better solution. Why He told them to sell their possessions, I don't. They didn't have enough cash, which means they're poor, basically. He's not talking to rich people here. He's not even at that point yet. These disciples are basically people who don't have cash to give to the poor. The second reason, I think, is that there is an impulse in Christianity to simplify, not accumulate. And it goes diametrically opposed to the American impulse to accumulate. Add and add and add more and more things, more and more clothes, more and more cars, more and more houses, more and more investments, more, until our capacities to enjoy the simple things of life dry up. And the only thing we can imagine makes us happy is another thing. And Christianity comes along and He says, I'm your Father, I'm your shepherd, I'm your king, I'm generous, I'll give what you need. Simplify, that you might live for the good of others. So point number 2 is that when you trust God as shepherd and Father and King, It carries a tremendous impulse towards simplicity and not accumulation. Third point, the purpose of money in the world is to maximize our treasure in heaven, not on earth. That's the purpose of money. Verse 33 again, sell your possessions and give to charity. Make yourselves money belts that do not wear out. What does that mean? Definition. That is an unfailing treasure in heaven, not on the earth, in heaven, where no thief comes and no moth destroys. The way to obey this command, to make for yourselves purses or money belts that don't get old, is to lay up treasure in heaven. And the way you lay up treasure in heaven is sell your possessions and give to those in need. The point of money is treasure in heaven. You are all stewards. Children, you get allowances. If you don't, tell Mom and Dad I said you should. What have I done? You get 50 cents, 25 cents, $1. Is that okay? A week? The point of an allowance is to lay up treasure in heaven. How? By using it lovingly. Lovingly. And not selfishly. And when we use it lovingly and not selfishly, treasure increases in heaven. I take that to mean the maximizing of our joy of God in heaven rises in proportion to our delight in Him and our trust in Him here that freed us to use our money aright. There's a correlation between the heart that grows in its dependence on God here rather than on money and things, and how we will delight in God and treasure God in heaven. Which is why in chapter 16 Jesus said, you cannot serve two masters. Either you will love the one and hate the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Serving money would mean cherishing money and doing everything you can to maximize the benefits of money in your life. Serving God would mean cherishing God and doing everything you can to maximize the benefits of God in your life. And you can't do both, Jesus says. If you do the God thing, you worship.
This is Light and Truth, God-centered preaching to help you see Christ clearly and treasure Him truly. I'm your host, Dan Kruver. Thank you for listening. On our next episode, John Piper will preach a sermon titled, Worshiping God Through Singing, in our series, What is True Worship? I hope you'll join us. For more resources, visit desiringgod.org.